Hello, everyone. I'm Meredith, and welcome to the Brahma Kumari's Facebook site, and where we interview all kinds of really, really interesting people. I like to feel that way because I'm like amazed at the people that I've been lucky enough to interview over the last few months. And tonight we have, again, a fascinating woman. And I know that people, if you've met, whenever we talk to people, often what happens is, they have a story to tell you, right? They've got a story, and a lot of people's stories are pretty interesting, pretty amazing. But you wouldn't necessarily think that a book can come out of it, right? It's just a person with their story. Well, my guest tonight is an accomplished writer, coach, teacher, organizer, publisher, who believes that everybody can actually write their own memoir. And a memoir, to me, when I think of memoir, oh, that's pretty overwhelming, the idea of a memoir. And she doesn't feel that way. Her name is Patricia Charpentier. And Patricia is the author of Eating an Elephant, Write Your Life, One Bite at a Time. Patricia, it's a pleasure to have you here. I'm going to tell everybody the truth. I have someone that I worked with at WLRN TV for many, many years. He was the program director, so he had seen every single PBS program in the world, and he has been raving about Patricia and saying, you have to have her on your program. She's really changed his life. And when he says that, I listen.
That's great. Hey, Meredith, I am so glad to be here. Thank you.
I've learned a lot just from him, from you already talking to you, and from reading your book. Or I can't say I read every single, there's so much in it. It doesn't seem like a big book, but there's a lot of information.
Well, it's one of those books that you read what you need when you need it kind of book. So that's why it's written in bites, in 200 small bites. So it's got an index. You just look up what you need help with, and then you go to that part.
So bite after bite makes for a book. So I guess my question is, why would someone want to write their memoir or let's call it their life story? Memoir is, again, pretty heavy, right? But why would someone want to write their memoir? Is it because they have been through something? What I often see is people have been through something so heavy, or maybe something so fascinating and interesting adventure in their life, and they're focused on that one part of their life that they want to tell the story of. Often it's some heavy duty stuff and, that kind of thing. So I was wondering, is that why a person might feel that they have a life story?
Well, it's kind of all of the above,
Uh-huh.
I believe everybody has a story that's worth writing. And people write those stories for all different reasons. Right. There are a lot of people who have survived something, have gone through something that may have been painful, difficult, who want to write it for themselves first. And I truly believe that we write for ourselves first, and we will be the biggest beneficiary of us taking the time to write it, because we're going to learn so much more about ourselves through that act of writing. We'll be able to connect dots, we'll understand things. And I have been doing this for more than 20 years, and I see it with every client. So the first person then you're writing for is yourself. But then after that, sometimes their experiences they think will help someone else. Sometimes they're writing for family. Sometimes they're writing just for themselves. And that is a perfectly legitimate reason to write.
Interesting. So you're saying it's more like a cleansing process, perhaps. And I don't mean cleansing necessarily that it was a bad thing that they went through, though many people have. It just kind of cleanses them or makes them realize things, I should say, about their life that they wouldn't have done if they hadn't written this life story.
Yeah, it's true, because greater understanding comes with writing. And I don't believe that writing is therapy, but I definitely believe it's therapeutic. And, it has been for me in my own life. And like I said, I've seen so many people that I've helped write that have had healing through writing, or forgiveness, or being able to let go, or really being able to relive the joys or the successes, or, just all the moments that make up a life, good, bad, and ugly.
The good, bad, and the ugly, isn't it?
Right.
Our lives are so complex, and sometimes I'm wondering if we forget, like, or I know myself, something happened as a child, and it's like I blocked it out of my mind, a good
Yeah.
thing or a bad thing. I've just forgotten it.
Yeah.
Or something happened 3 years ago, but I'm still dwelling on that, that happened. So, I'm wondering, is it sort of like puts your whole life together? Like it kind of gives you like a neat package, almost with a bow on it. Like, here is my life. This is my life,
Yeah, sometimes. And you mentioned life story and memoir is like a slice of life. So if we look at the whole life story as, like, say, a pie, memoir is one slice of that life. So, memoir may focus on a particular time period, just your growing up years, or the years that you spent in World War II, or whatever the time period is, or it may be a theme that runs throughout the life. So it may not be the entirety of your life, like I was born, a very young child, and then go on until present day. It may just be parts of the life that you want to tell. So it can be
That's
either.
interesting. That's interesting, because I was thinking that it has to start with day one. This happened to me, and I came here as a refugee. And so you can do whatever you want with this memoir, or this life story.
You can. I wanted to show you this. This is one that I did for a gentleman, and this is the size of the book. Okay.
Yeah.
And so people think, oh, you've got to write a book, it's got to be huge. No, it's this size of this book. That was his story. And then I've also done this one, which is this big. So, 500 and something pages worth. So it really does depend on what somebody wants to do. They can write just a collection of the stories that they remember. So my motto of everything I do with writing is, the only way to do this wrong is to not do it at all. Only way to do it wrong is to not do it. So whatever they do in any way, shape, form, it's right and it's good, and they will benefit, and the people that they care about will benefit as well.
So are you saying to me, or, to the world, that we all should write a memoir? I'm asking you this because people have said to me, oh, well, you worked in television, and then you suddenly your life changed. I mean, my life didn't change. I was still in television, but you suddenly had a kind of an awakening, which I did when I was in my early 30s, and went on this spiritual path of meditation and spiritual study. And they say, oh, you could write a book. And I go, no, I can't. And they'll look at me like, well, why not? You're also, been writing scripts your whole life. And I go, I say, I can't do it. I can't remember my life. I wouldn't know how to put it together. And so you're saying that we all not just have a story, but we all can write that story of our life. Can we?
Yes.
Can we really?
Yes, we can. And most of the time, the people that say, oh, my life isn't interesting enough to write, they're the ones that have the most interesting stories of all. So yes, everybody's story, no one else has lived the life that you have lived in the way that you have lived it, from the perspective that you have lived it. And so no one else can write that story besides you. And if the person doesn't write it, then that story is lost. Everything that we do, it's over. Everything is so temporal. We write emails, when we do tweets and Facebook posts and all of that stuff is gone just about the time you do it. But a book does not go anywhere. Okay. And I've seen this with families that they will throw away papers all day long, but they will not throw a book away. And that book will go down the line from generation to generation to generation. And, you know, just think about for yourself, if you would have the story that your parents or grandparents or great grandparents, just about their ordinary daily lives, what kind of value that would have for you.
Patricia, you are saying something that really kind of hits me deeply, because I was just telling Mita is our technical director all the time, Mita Saxena, on this program with the Brahma Kumaris. So Mita and I were talking before the program, you know, about, I was saying, God, I feel guilty that I know nothing about my grandmother on my father's side or my grandfather. I mean, I know that my mother or my father once told me, yes, she was a poet. That's all I knew. She died. They came from Russia. She died, I mean, when I was quite young, and as did my grandfather. And my father never really talked about them. I don't remember anything. And that's it. That's all I know. And I'm thinking, you know, if I had maybe gotten some stories from my father when I was younger, or thought about this idea, you know, I think another thing that I wanted to bring up is, often people think memoir, I like life story better. Memoir is often something only famous people do, right? Like, you got to be a celebrity to have a memoir. You have to have something so big, but it can just be, like you say, the story of yourself, your family. I mean, I would like to know so much. I would like to know more even about my mother and father, even though I feel like I knew parts, but it would really have been nice to maybe, there's so much
you don't know. So much
that you don't know about our lives. Do you think that knowing more about our lives would help us, you know, would really help us in terms of understanding why we are the way we are?
I think so. I definitely believe that, because I believe it helps us to have a greater understanding of the people who came before us, their good parts and their bad parts. And so, yeah, I think it does. And it helps us to understand why we possibly do things or think things in a way that we do, once we know our family stories. So, yeah, I mean, it would probably take the next couple of hours for me to tell you all the reasons why I think it's a great idea for people to write their stories. And I mean, you can start like right now. Somebody can think of a memory that they had maybe when they were 10 or 15 and take 5 minutes and write a paragraph. You know, I had one client, I wasn't even a client. She was someone that heard me speak in a class, and I said, write 10 minutes a day. That's all you got to do. Write 10 minutes a day. You know, don't make it bigger than that. Write 10 minutes. And she called me a while after that and said, I want to invite you to my book launch. I did what you said. I wrote 10 minutes every day. My book is done.
God, you must feel great when you hear
Oh my
something.
God, I know. Well, I always get a little nervous because she said, I did what you said to do. And I was like, oh God, what did I tell this woman to do? You know, but it's awesome. And I got story after story after story of how this has impacted, you know, people writing their lives. And it might just be a little bit, or it might be a long project that they work on.
I mean, it's something that it really becomes almost like a passion, or it becomes your purpose. As I find that the man that I work with for so many years, Stephen Weisberg, I know he wouldn't mind if I give his name out. That when I speak with him, he's a good writer, which leads me. I mean, he was a good writer to begin with. Your point in your book and in talking to you is, you don't have to be a good writer to write your life story. And that floored me, because I feel that's really important to have some writing skills. And you're saying not necessarily.
Well, it depends. You know, if you have that interest and want to improve your writing, then yes, you know, you can. There's a lot available to help you to improve your writing skills. But I can tell you, the little bit that I have from my grandmother, with all of her misspellings and, all the incorrect grammar and all, I would not trade that for the world. And, grammar, spelling, all that stuff, if you want to get it fixed, that's the easiest stuff in the world to fix. Somebody can fix that for you, but no one else can write the stories that you have, that you've lived, that are in your heart, in your mind, that you carry with you.
Isn't it interesting? I mean, as I'm sitting here talking to you, and I have thought about this before, just through, my spiritual practice, is that every one of us in this entire world, billions of people, nobody has the same story. I mean, they might have similar stories. Maybe you came over on a boat, from Cuba. So you share a common theme, but you had different family. You came from different countries. You go on to do different things. So nothing is the same. So, I mean, it's, like you say, you have just been amazed, and you don't have to necessarily have some great education or come from some kind of a fascinating family. Often, again, as I was saying, we have to be like some sort of a person with this amazing story. So have you found, because you've coached a lot of people and worked with a lot of people, and I guess you've read a lot of life stories, right?
Yes, I have.
It doesn't matter where you come from, what you've done. Excuse me. Let me just get some water. What you've done, what you've accomplished or haven't accomplished. Maybe that's even more of a story, that things went wrong in your life. So have you found that all these people that you've coached a lot of people and work with a lot of people, that everybody does have something worth telling?
Yeah, I haven't found a boring story yet. And I've done it for 20 somewhat years and published, I don't know, 70, 80 books for people. So I haven't found a story yet that I've been bored by. And I read memoir. I mean, I read memoir voraciously. I write it, I live it, I read it. And there's always interesting things in stories. Now, some I like better than others. I like certain writing styles better than others, but that doesn't negate the value of the story that's being told.
I know that you write about a woman in your book that you were really impressed with. I think she was 100 years old, or, when she wrote her memoir, or wrote it maybe shortly before, and has gone on to write 2 books. So.
Yep. This is my client, Miss Lucille. She's 104 this month. Oh. And she wrote her husband's story. And we did that a few years ago. And now she's writing her story before him, because they were married 70 somewhat years, I think. So she's writing her story up to the point where their stories combine. So, yeah. And she's slick. I mean, she's got an iPad and she texts and tweets, and I mean, she's
God,
great.
That's something. Now, I can't even imagine the stories that have come, that she has experienced being 104 years old. I mean, I can't even imagine what she's been through. That people, especially younger generations today, would have no idea. What? You used to have the old-fashioned typewriter,
crank phone. Yeah, we have to explain a lot of things, because her great grandchildren and all, they don't know, they don't have that frame of reference. So yeah, we just put that into context and explain what those things are so they can understand.
We were talking about what the subject matter is, and something that did come to my mind, because I just see it so much today in the world, and maybe not necessarily in writing, or maybe also on social media, people telling bad stories, the suffering they've been through, the bad divorce. You see people showing on social media their operation, getting, I don't know if you can do this these days with COVID and everything, but having their surgery videoed for Facebook. And I'm just wondering, is that a tendency of people to write a lot, the way the world is today with a lot of suffering? Is that the tendency of a lot of people to write a lot of the bad stuff? And should they be writing the suffering part?
Well, yes, I think they should, because whose life has not had suffering in it? And what has that suffering meant in our lives? You know, many times that kind of suffering leads us to a better time in our lives. So I do think it's important to write. And I have had a couple of clients who all they wanted to write was the happy stories, and that's fine, that's their choice. But I do think they're doing a disservice to their families not to give the overall picture. But if you look at the published memoirs, you know, the ones that are published by the big five, the traditional publishers, most of all of those are traumatic stories in some kind of way or another, because that's what they're buying. But our life stories don't have to be all trauma, because they're not. So because my life writers, I have a membership group called Life Writers, and we read a published memoir in that. And many times they'll ask me, well, why don't you find a happy memoir for us to read? Some of these are just heavy, you know, that what has happened to these people. And I'm like, yeah, if you want to read a happy memoir, then go ahead and write one, because a lot of the ones that are on the mass market or are difficult stories. But I always look for the hope. And most of them have hope. Like we read Educated by Tara Westover not that long ago, which is unbelievable story of things that she suffered, and you know, just kind of went through what her family was like. There's not 1 ounce of judgment in that book of her family. She just kind of puts it out as to what happened, but then there's so much hope, because she shows how she kind of came out on the other side and what became of her as a result of living through the experiences she did.
Powerful, because you're talking about resilience.
Yes.
You're talking about growth. Like, we might suffer or go through heavy things in our lives, and like you say, probably everybody's got something.
Yeah.
But
it's not the end of the story.
How we learned, you know, and that to me is a spiritual lesson. What are we gaining with this loss that maybe we've experienced? But sometimes I have found that people suffer and they hold on to it. You know, they hold on to the suffering. Like they keep telling the same story over and over again. And they almost are still suffering with something maybe that happened 30 years ago. So what advice, I mean, not advice, but do you feel that maybe when you write your life story, you're able to release it and just get rid of it?
Yeah, I think so. You know, like and I do know exactly what you're talking about. I've worked with people that way, where it almost becomes their identity. The suffering becomes their identity. And I have seen people let go of things that have happened to them and really difficult circumstances, because there is something therapeutic in the process of putting it together. And I mean, you can sit there and you can think about something for a long time, but when you put it down in writing and you can see it, something clicks. And I always say it just connects the dots. And so I do believe people can use writing in a big way to understand, to gain greater understanding of themselves and the lives that they've lived. And I believe writing is a spiritual process. And because of that, and because of a lot of things. And I think when we start to look at our lives from a perspective, like when we're writing, if we're looking for the spiritual moments, like the moments of coincidence that maybe weren't coincidence, those are the things that really come to light more when you write than when you talk or when you think about it. And that's just the spiritual part of writing. It's amazing.
I've actually been to classes like that, and I know you do a lot of coaching like this, you know, where we sit there and we write. They might say, okay, you have 10 minutes, just write.
Yeah.
And often you leave, or I sit there and I feel like, I have nothing to say, or right now, I don't know what to say. And
Right.
then what do you encourage people to just kind of sit with it and something will pop up? Or how do
Um,
you get to that point of being able to release it and put it on paper? Or I don't know.
It usually takes a lot of words, but
Yeah.
I don't recommend that people sit and think too much.
Mm.
I think they should get into action and start writing. And even if they have to write, I don't have a thought in my head. I have no idea what I want to write about. I am dull. I am boring. Eventually your subconscious mind will get tired of hearing that, and
Yeah.
it'll throw something up to you. So I think it's good for people to get into the motion of writing. And I love Anne Lamott, how she says, you have to give yourself permission to write shitty first drafts. And I know it's kind of off color language, but it's true. We have to give ourselves permission to just write in a way that's terrible before it'll ever get to be anything good. And so many of us have this ninth grade English teacher on our shoulder with a red pen, and that we were traumatized by. And we just got to get that person off of our shoulder and just write and enjoy the act of putting your life on paper.
Oh, I love what you're saying. Enjoy the act, because I so believe enjoy the process of our lives, right? Not get caught up in what are people going to say, or I'm not a writer, I'm not a journal. People feel that often that they don't know what to say. And it's actually so inspiring what you're saying. And I wanted to add one more thing, one more question is that you do believe, and I'm not sure if you already mentioned it, that it, like you said, it needs to be every day, but sometimes you get up and you just have, like I said, nothing to say, but you believe in sort of doing a little ritual that would you have a daily ritual that will get you into writing. So maybe explain that. I like that.
Something that it just kind of alerts your subconscious like you're ready to write. And I understand how life is. There are some times that there's no way you're going to be able to write every day. But it's consistency that ends up getting done, whatever it is that you want to write. So it may not be that it's every day, but maybe it's a couple of hours every week. So it's just the start and stop is what really just takes people off the rails. So it's just the consistent forward progress. And it is nice to have some kind of a ritual. And it can be something very, very simple, like just go and make a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. It might be that you're sitting in a particular location. It might be that you light a candle. And however you write, I knew one gentleman that would write by pencil, and he would just sharpen 10 pencils. And that was his writing ritual before he started. But it's something that alerts the subconscious, like, okay, now I'm in this place and I'm ready to write and I'm ready to receive, because from our inner selves, our subconscious, it's letting that part of us know that we're ready to receive whatever is going to come.
It's like a deep prompt, isn't it? Like you get that prompt and you have to do it. Like you say, you have to have that cup of tea or sharpen your pencils or whatever. And then, okay, now I'm ready.
Yeah.
No going back. Right.
And a great little trick too, that I never believed would work, because I'm always one that likes to get to an end of a paragraph, an end of a chapter, anything, is to stop in the middle, stop mid-sentence. Even when you're in the process of writing, when you get close to your end time, just stop in the middle. Because what happens when you stop in the middle is that your mind continues to think about it. And then when you get ready to start writing again, the next time, you're in the middle of a sentence. So there's no running in place before you actually get going. You just pick up where you left off and you're off to the races right away, which is one of the best tips I was ever given about writing.
God, so many tips in your book and in your coaching. I did want to mention that you do have a website
Yep.
where people can get more information. Maybe you could just mention it, and I will hold up the book with your name. I think your
Yeah.
name is on the screen, will be on the screen.
Yeah, it'll be. Yeah, well, I have
But
two
let me do it like this.
websites.
Easier
There you
and
go.
here. See it?
Two
Okay.
websites. The
Yeah.
first is writingyourlife.org, and that's kind of the main website. One thing that I'm doing more of right now, which is great, is I've got a Life Writers membership, and it's lifewriters.us. And it's people from all over the country, all through, there's several from Canada, from different locations. And we have created a community of writers that includes instruction. I do instruction as well.
Mhm.
And there's built-in accountability. So it really does help people. It gives writers what they need in order to succeed.
Beautifully said. And, again, what touches me is when I think of writers being in the business, I think of, my friends that are hardcore journalists, and I think, oh God, I could never, people who have been very serious journalists for so many years. And I wouldn't necessarily want to be in a group with them writing my story, because some of them are, they're really award-winning writers, and I'd be so intimidated. But your group, not necessarily, I mean, maybe there's one in that group, but those people probably can do it on their own anyway. Your group is a group like just regular people group, right? That,
Regular people of
I love
all
it.
different writing abilities. We've got people in there that have never written anything when it comes to story. We have people in there that have published books. So it's the whole gamut, but what we're all there for is to support each other in wherever the person is, and to support them in what it is that they want to do. If they want to just kind of play around with writing as a hobby, that's
Mhm.
great. And we will support them to do that. And if you're working on a second or third book, you're in there, and we'll have people in there that will help you with that as well.
I wanted to add that, or I think I'm adding this, and I might be wrong, but you really shouldn't go into this if you think you're going to make a lot of money selling your book, right? You might, maybe there's someone out there, but it could happen. But
Yeah.
this is not the place, that would be where you approach publishing companies and you really know what you're doing. Am I right about that? This is more for people that just really want to tell their stories, and maybe something comes of it.
Well, there's
Uh,
a lot of different ways to publish other
Yeah.
than the big
Right,
five
right.
in New
Yeah.
York. And but no, I think it's for serious writers. I've got award-winning writers in there. This woman, she
What is
wrote
that?
a book, and it's called A Dream Called Christy by Becky McGregor. She's one of our life writers, and this is award-winning book. And so it's really, and there's another one down here somewhere too. I've got quite a few people that are in there that have won awards, been published, and they are just as supportive of the people who want to write a couple little stories for their grandkids. And so everybody gets the same attention, and the program, the membership is such that you can get as much out of it as you want, but you're not forced to drink from a fire hose if you don't want to. So it's for everybody.
It's your story, right? And
Yeah.
your life, and you can do whatever you want. But I just love how you're providing this opportunity for people. And the message to me is that if you want to write your life story, you can do it. You don't have to be the accomplished writer. You don't have to have some shocking story that's going to shock the world. It's your story, and it's you, and that's all that matters. And what I'm thinking is just do it, right? That's what I'm getting from you, is you want to do it. And your book really gives a lot of tips. I mean, a lot in terms of editing, knowing how to put the chronological order, how to really put your book together. A lot is in that book. And I know we could talk all day. You have so much to say, so much to share. I know you could. With so much invaluable information, but I just loved how you shared that there is really a spiritual component to this. You know, it's
Very.
about knowing yourself more, knowing your past, and maybe why the way you are has to do with something you didn't even think about until you started writing your life story. So
Exactly. There's
great to
so
get to meet
many
you
levels. Oh, this
and
was
interview
wonderful.
you,
Thank you.
Patricia. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen Weisberg out there, right?
Yeah.
The program director of WLRN TV for many years. He's, again, as I said, he suggested that I get a hold of Patricia, which I did. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My
Thank you,
pleasure,
everybody,
privilege.
for tuning in. Thank you so much.